Welcome to Leaning In, a space for curious conversation and active engagement. I, Tanya Mikvitz,
and I, Jessica Lusty, invite you to lean into life together, exploring what it means to live into transformational practices in our day-to-day lives as we engage in relationships, family dynamics, our conditioning, and the narratives of dominant culture.
How do we actually embody change in our own lives and as a collective? Welcome, everyone. It's good to be here with you again. So if you're new to this podcast, you're new to tuning in to Leaning In, just letting you know that if you wanted to go back to the previous episodes, in the first episode, we introduce ourselves, me, Tanya, and Jessica, who's over in DC. I'm in London. So you'll get an idea of who we are and where we come from. And then in the second episode, we sort of laid out the kind of space we're really envisioning here, what we're co-creating, how we want to move in the space, and what we invite into the space. Then in the last episode, episode 3, we were talking about the big themes that we will be talking about, diving into, getting more experiential around, feeling into the big themes of life that, all of us move through in our different ways and at different times individually, but also we have this shared experience. So now in this episode, we're going to start to just bring in the practices that both of us have found helpful and how we've kind of come to this work and what the tools are that help us to navigate this beautiful, messy, crazy experience of being in a human body in a very messed up world. So, what I sort of wanted to start with is really where my journey started. As I've mentioned before, my personal healing journey really began as I came to the yoga practices, very much from a sort of physical point of view. And back when I started practicing yoga and I went to classes, it really was just about the asana, just about the physical practice, or that's what we were offered. There wasn't a lot of talk about the tradition or spirituality or the energy body or any of those things. However, I had a deep experience of things beginning to shift and change. And it really came from a greater awareness of being in my body. And through that, starting to come into relationship with what I was actually feeling. And then as I've gone on with the practices and become more familiar with the maps and starting to understand why this was shifting and looking at things like the chakra system, energy body systems that we have several different understandings of, but starting to understand that when we're moving our bodies, we're moving our whole selves. So I feel that that gateway is really powerful. And also that starting to understand what's happening in your body can be a great way of understanding what's actually happening in your emotional body or what's happening in your mind. And really the interrelationships of that, of experiencing fully what's present. And that there is great wisdom that when we start to understand how our body's reacting, what our body might be carrying, and what is that thing, like you might have been to a yoga class or done some Tai Chi, and then suddenly tears come, something is releasing. Or that how you were when you began the practice is very different to how you are when you end it. So what was happening? And the more we get curious about this, the more we start to understand how we really are and there is so much information in starting to really listen to your body. The curiosity I've had about myself really comes from that somatic experience. And it's really interesting when you start to then move your body in different ways. So for me, I came to yoga, and obviously in the yoga practice, in the hatha yoga practices, we move in quite specific ways with great intention, because you are shifting your energy body, you are shaping the prana, the life force, which is more and more interesting the more and more you understand of it. And some would say that with yoga it's the self-mastery. When you start to understand how the prana, how the energy can move, and you start to harness it and build it and channel it, this is really when you become more skillful in all the ways. So if you're feeling tired, what kind of practice would you do? If you're feeling sad, how can you support yourself in your practice? But then also other ways of moving, and moving in a more spontaneous way. And Jessica and I share the love for journey dance. In fact, Jessica was really the high priestess of journey dance for me, because you taught me the first journey dance I ever did, and I loved it. And I loved the way you facilitated it with just such the incredible embodiment of the practice, and just amazing enthusiasm. So journey dance was created by Tony Bergins, and is a modality which is quite specific, but really takes you, I feel, through a sort of ritual flow through the body that has both an internal aspect, very deep processing aspect, as well as a sort of community aspect, and just being in togetherness. But something really happens when you're moving from the inside out. So rather than inhabiting the shapes given to you and having an experience because of that, and the great wisdom in that, you're listening to the deeper wisdom of the body, and how the body needs to move to heal itself, to release emotion, to experience emotion, to throw things out, to bring things in, to open up, or whatever it might be. And that's been an amazing journey as well to be on. So I don't know if you want to take over, the really high priestess of the journey dance, in my opinion. I'll always be grateful for that, Jess.
Thanks, Tanya. And just such a depth of gratitude, and just a deep bow and love and appreciation sending out to Tony Bergens and all the journey dance community. That has been a modality for me that I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Such a rich journey over probably several decades now, or getting close. And, I think that this is so much, what we want and will continue to emphasize and bring into the space, the gifts that somatic-based, body-based practices have given us, that we can work with in ways that are day-to-day in practice, in other capacities and expressions, that can meet people in a variety of different ways based on where they are and what's accessible to them and what resonates, that also really brings that attention to the body and the way that our experiences live within our corporal body, the way our corporal body is responding to the immediate moment, as well as to the way the immediate moment is reaching back into the past and activating or bringing forward experiences that have been attended to, so that they're asserting and living in the present moment in a variety of ways. And some of those ways can be good and generative and supportive of what we want to create, and some of those can be contradictory and distorting and taking us further away from what we actually want to aim towards in any given moment. And the body is such a profound resource and guide for that. And the other thing that these practices that we're referencing here, and others that I've practiced within, that are somatic or based, increasing our attention to the feedback we're getting from our physical systems. Another really amazing unfolding has been for me to really come into a deep sense of reverence and respect and regard for the sensitivities of the sensitivity of our systems, of our physical systems, our physiological, our energetic systems, and then how that links into our mental and psychological states. And I think this is such a piece of where I've had so many experiential learnings, and at the same time, to me, the learnings often are parallel with an unlearning, right? Unlearning a way of relating to my body that has taken me further and further away from a kind of care for myself, and a way of making choices that can support more fully my energetic system, my physical system, my mental system, my psychological system. And, one of these experiences that really kind of brought the sensitivity to my system home to me, and just how directly responsive our bodies are to what we are consuming in terms of food, drink, media. And I think we all know this. And I know for myself, I've had so many learnings and unlearnings that have experiences, and just really kind of, coming to, I like to say, there's moments in my life where I have been brought like beyond to my knees, but to my belly, in just a sense of so open to learning what will help me shift a pattern, what will help me break free from some way of being in relationship with myself, of the world that I keep running into, that is not satisfying, that is not what I want and hope and dream for myself or my relationships. And, some of those have brought me into this real sense of, okay, I recognize that it takes a level of awareness and a level of creating the space, as we've talked about in this, to be attuning to and aware of how things are impacting us. And then a level of discipline, but I really like to think of it more as devotion. There was a moment for me where I really recognized that an approach to healing and change and making better choices that was based in like a disciplined approach was feeling a little bit constricting and sort of like authoritative, and it just didn't have the feel. So I really came into this place of more of a devotional aspect, really being devoted to making the choices that support my sense of feeling well, and being able to really place the care of my system at the forefront, rather than things that I might have been prioritizing that were about, keeping up with the pace of things, or performing at a certain level, or being included, staying with the group in terms of what the group was doing. And I had an experience over the last holiday break where we'd been in the house, and we'd been having, a lot of people and a lot of things going on. And it was just a lot of, kind of homebody time. And it was wonderful. And I thought one day I would love to see a movie, and it was like past COVID and we could go back to the movies again. And I looked up what was playing at this little theater up the road that often features independent films, and The Whale was playing. And I didn't know anything about this film. I read a little bit about, sort of like the acclaims for the performance. The reviews were very, very shining for the performance as of the actors, and, that it was just a really captivating and deep and impactful, story about, what we are grappling, some of the big themes of human relationship. And so I thought, okay, I'll go. And I went, and I'd had a nice lunch, things that make my body feel good. I was rested. I got my ticket. I felt good in every way. Like my whole system was just sort of like humming along, feeling good. And I sat down in the theater. I didn't eat anything or drink anything while I was in there. I brought a water bottle, and I was captivated and just sort of taken right into this film and into this narrative and into this story and into these lives. And I came out of that film. I had heartburn, I had indigestion, and I was distraught and depressed. And I just noticed, wow, this is such an immediate and direct impact where my body has been entirely, my physical experience has been entirely shaped and sometimes, kind of feels like hijacked, by this thing that I engaged with in such a visceral way. And it just really highlighted for me, this aspect of how sensitive our systems are. And then I had this other little, when I was thinking about, sharing this episode and talking about some of these experiences and ways of being in relationship with ourselves, a friend who was hosting a teenage exchange student. This young woman had been with them for a week, and they'd gotten to know her pretty well. And they all went to Starbucks, and she ordered a Frappuccino. And she didn't know that this had caffeine in it. She thought it was sugar and chocolate and, and dairy milk. And they came home, and this young woman began like talking 100 miles a minute, bouncing off the walls, just like acting in a way that was so out of character with everything they'd experienced with her up until that point. And my friend's teenage daughter came down and said, oh my gosh, this is, it's kind of scary. It was just because it was such a change. It was such a profound shift in the way that this young woman was behaving. And it's these moments of really recognition, of just how things are impacting us, and how do we slow down and make space to really attune to our bodies, to get to know them, to approach it with a sense of devotion to, what it is that we want to center for how we want to feel and how we want to be in the world, and how we want to show up, right, for others, because it has a huge impact on that as well. So that's one of the things that, for me, centering somatic practices in this place and in this space will hopefully continue to support all of us to just, be in greater resourced relationship with, is the sensitivities of our systems.
I really love everything you shared, and I love this idea of devotion, not discipline, because I think we are. Not to say that discipline isn't a good thing, but this thing of that we're doing it from really something good, and we are so taught in our world to kind of have a very sort of dry kind of discipline. And it makes me think of, what you said about, like this effects of caffeine, for instance. And I mean, hands up, I love my coffee. I will probably not stop drinking it, but just this understanding that there are so many things that we do and engage with and are encouraged to engage with that really suppress the innate sort of wisdom of the body, the innate call of the body to move towards healing, to move towards homeostasis, towards being in balance. That really, so much of what we're sort of encouraged to do, that is like laid out in front of us, that is also shared as a community, is really pulling us out of balance. And then the sort of the discipline becomes about the drive, like keep going, don't listen to it, just keep going. And then we have so many of us who end up in burnout, right? And I think, there are so many ways that we are really called to suppress any impulses from our bodies, whether it's like, oh, you've got a headache, take a pill, rather than kind of go, okay, what is this headache about? What is the deeper thing that is going on that is causing this headache? No, we suppress it. I'm tired. Let's have a double shot of coffee, burning, like just burning the candle at both ends. And there's a sense of that being kind of celebrated as well, like that you can keep going, and there's a kind of martyrdom. I know I'm guilty of that myself at times, like, oh, I'm so busy, um and there are so many things, especially as women, we are sick, we are all beings, whatever gender, are cyclical because we're part of the cycles of nature. But even that, right, we ignore it within our own bodies. We're asked to not pay attention to when we come in our cycle, for instance. We take the painkillers, you do all the things that even like sort of suppress the flow of a bleed, and we're not allowed to take the rest that we might need, or honor that at different parts in our cycles we will have different needs for activity, different needs for rest. And that somehow when it happens, it's a bad thing, right, that our bodies are changing. And I mean, even the language, I mean, there's so much to say in there, but thinking of like calling a bleed the curse, for instance, that it's like this thing that we just wish wasn't happening. And I think that goes for so many of the things that we do, like we wish that we didn't need so much sleep or whatever because we want to keep going. And just kind of ignoring the symptoms. It's almost like the body is this, that we are so identified with what our minds can do and what our actions are, that the body is like this inconvenience, right? And I think that's where coming into any kind of somatic practice starts to rebuild, like you say, the sensitivity, rebuild the relationship, which has kind of been encouraged to be ruptured in a way to our bodies. And the level of awareness, and I think as somebody who's a facilitator of somatic practices, you can see it so often when people are coming into the room, and this sense of like, not even, in the beginning it's like, somebody says, little toe, and we have to really think like, where is my little toe? Like, you have no relationship to it, or you don't like it. Like, I came to yoga and I was like, I hate my feet, and that was like one of the, like, I don't want to see my feet. And it's like and then suddenly, through having to be barefoot in yoga practice, I was like, oh, actually I can sort of tolerate my feet, and slowly coming into even love my feet. But it's such a journey. But that because we never even talk about it, we're never encouraged to explore that. And just also having a sense of, often people come to somatic practice and they just want to get it right, as opposed to like, it's a real unlearning to kind of come into, no, this is about, how does it feel? Not like, am I doing it right? No, but how does it feel? And that orientation, I think it takes a lot of practice, and it takes a lot of, committed work, but it's then so rich. So why don't we take a moment to just feel into like, what is that actually, what is the experience of that? And depending on where you are, if you're safe to, if you're comfortable to, you might close your eyes. But if you're listening to this and you're out walking or you're driving, just stay very aware of your surroundings, but see if at the same time you can also be with more of an inner awareness. So just take a few moments to let the words kind of settle, and let your system settle, and just notice how your breath is moving. So let's begin with the feet. Can you bring your awareness into your big toe? Just notice if you can make a direct connection to your big toe. If you feel like you need to give it a bit of a wiggle, if you're able to, in the position that you're in, you might do that. And just notice if you can see what the texture of the big toe is, without any kind of expectation, but just allowing yourself to be a bit curious. And then you might get a sense of the toe next to it, the second toe, And can you actually feel into the third toe, or is it kind of lost in the middle somewhere? And what about the fourth toe? And then if you feel into your baby toe, does it feel different to the big toe? Allow your awareness now to come to the soles of the feet. What are your soles? The soles of your feet meeting. Are you on the ground? Are you wearing socks? Can you feel your footwear if you're wearing shoes? Where in the sole of the foot is the most sensation? If you bring your awareness to the tops of your feet, what do they feel like? From the inside, can you sense the shape of the top of your foot? Where does the ankle become the top of the foot? What point do the toes become toes? If you imagine that you can breathe all the way into your feet, what does that feel like? Imagine that your feet had a color that was completely their own. What color would that be? What's the energetic color of your feet? And are the 2 feet the same, or are they different? Maybe there is several tones of color. Maybe there's even some patterns. And now just allow your feet, in whatever position they're in, imagine that your feet really connect to the ground and the earth and the support beneath us. And that through this connection, you can draw in exactly the steadfastness and the steadiness and the support that you might need right now. Just feel your next few breaths as they move in and out. And if you've been in stillness, you might just gently move your body. If you've had your eyes closed, softly open your eyes whenever you feel ready. Maybe you stay with this for a while longer. And just notice if you have a different relationship to your feet than you did just a few minutes ago. I think a key thing is if we can become really curious. It's like the world can really open up. And if we get really curious about sort of our inner landscape and what's moving within our bodies in a way that isn't filled with reproach because our bodies aren't holding us or doing the things we need, or if we have aches and pains, that rather than being just taken down by that and getting upset with our bodies, that we come into a listening and a willingness to heal and support what needs healing and support. we can open up that relationship, we're also opening up the relationship, not just to our own bodies, but kind of like the body of the world. So we start to see the inner landscape. We also come into relationship with the outer landscape. And I believe like the two really weave with each other. So we start to respect the cycles that we are in our own environment, inner environment, and come into relationship with the cycles around us as well, and into a more intimate relationship. So much more is possible, and we start to understand so much more about ourselves and the world. So I really feel that it's like a pulsation from the inside to the outside. And we start to understand that at night we're meant to sleep. Then in the winter, if we're in the northern hemisphere and the days are shorter, we're meant to take it slower. We're meant to rest more, and so on. And how can we look after that? And then what does that mean in being more if we can be in a more respectful, honoring, devotional, as you said, relationship to our own bodies? What does that mean to be more respectful, more mindful, more devotional in our relationship to the outer world and to all the other beautiful beings within it?
Yes, yes, yes to all of that. Thank you, Tanya. So interesting to just be guided in that practice with you, and to notice, the difference between and the tendency, even after years of, really working to be, available to and in balance with the different sides of my body, how much I privilege my right side, and that my attention, is and holding both feet at the same time, just sort of reminded me of like this capacity to practice holding that which is also there, that is not what we tend to privilege with our attention, and that's such a central aspect of what we're doing here. And again, how the somatic practices are, they have their own, they're revelatory in their own ways within our own systems. And then they are also practices within which these other processes and practices that we're centering, reveal themselves and offer opportunity to be in that place of holding both, and really recognizing what it is that we tend to go to, the story, the interpretation, when something happens in our lives, in our relationships, and then being like, okay, and what else is here, and what else is possible, as you said so beautifully there. And I know it really brings us into another central modality that we'll be weaving here is shadow work. And shadow work, as you and I, it's brought us into this deep relationship, is a way of engaging with ourselves and centering the quality of our relationship with ourselves, the quality of our relationship with our experiences, past, present, and future, that is integrative, right, of our bodies, right? Tracking our bodies, letting our bodies speak, letting our bodies be sources of knowledge and information about what's up for us in any situation, especially in instances of, what in shadow work and in this space we often refer to as activation, right? And as activation meaning something is happening in my life, and I recognize that I'm having a very strong and activated response on either energetic, emotional, behavioral, right, level. I may be responding in a way, saying things, doing things. Notice agitation in my system, the way I'm moving or the way I'm not moving, right? Activation can have both more of a higher energy expression, which often it does for me, but it can also have a lower energy expression, right? When we become activated, we can become discouraged, despondent, depressive, like not wanting to engage, withdrawing. I have a couple that I love so much and I've done work with over the years. And, it's very interesting to observe in their dynamic that when one of them is activated, the expression is much more energetic, get louder, talk faster, get more physically present, in a bigger way. And where the other one, when activated, withdraws, gets quiet, shrinks. And that shadow work is a way that we can locate ourselves on that spectrum of our response when we are activated. And in locating ourselves, really then find ourselves there, attend to ourselves, begin to come into more of an awareness of where those patterns come from, what we tend to do. And like I was saying with the foot, then what else is possible? What else is alongside of that? These different parts of ourselves that may be operative in the moment that are holding very different energies and very different qualities of reaction to what's happening, or qualities of desire to react to what's happening in a different way, right? Because that's been the piece for me that's been so powerful about shadow work, is the capacity to locate myself in what I tend to do, and then also locate myself in what is it that I actually desire to create out of this moment, and be with that part of myself there, that can then bring those two together and then find a way. In shadow work, we often rehearse, right? It can be, there's an imaginative, there's a creative, there's a playful way of being in relationship with our patterns and our tendencies, so that we can rehearse for change. We can, in the engagement with ourselves, deeply embody and explore what is showing up so that we can understand it and attend to it, and then explore what are other possible ways of feeling and being, or centering other feelings that are there, and what takes shape then when those feelings present. I know, in a conversation with someone I've been witnessing and supporting in a lot of work, it's like, also like the more tender feelings are not what's always being presenced, and they're being overpowered, and the system is running on the defensive ways of being in relationship, rather than the more vulnerable centering what is in the feeling body, that is truer to what could be brought forward, that creates a different possibility for connection in that moment. So there are a lot of different aspects to shadow work that have to do with somatic presencing, really letting the body speak, tracing the feelings, using imaginative play and engagement to come into relationship with these different parts of ourselves. In a previous episode, Tanya, you talked about, that childlike innocence, and that has this immediacy in the relationship with the life, and is in this joyful availability for play and creativity that exists alongside this more critical edge, right? And then how do we come into greater relationship and different kinds of capacity for being in different ways, through these kinds of exploration. Is there anything you'd want to add on sort of just, kind of as the intention of this episode is to give a primer for some of the modalities that will be here in relationship to the shadow work piece?
I think, I mean, you put it so well. I think the really, for me, the key piece is that in the shadow work we can sort of, through the body, my experience has been, I've been able to access memories and understandings of where things really come from in my history. That through presencing the feeling in the body that comes with, whether it's a trigger or activation, the reactivity, something happening in the now, it's the body's like like a map, like almost like the secret map that can find the way back to understanding where that, that original, or where the overall sense of being, whether it's rejected or abandoned or whatever it might be, comes from. And then, like you said, the opportunity to kind of possibly also rework something, to possibly go back in time, like the body's the map, the sort of the like the time capsule, not the time capsule, that's not what I mean, like it allows you to travel in time, and then travel back in time, and almost give you an opportunity to perhaps say what needed to be said, or tend to the young you, so that you get a different quality of, you can hold that experience from a different kind of awareness, which then allows for this possibility to move forwards in a different way, not again and again end up in the same patterns, in the same situation, right? Because this is, how often don't we say, how come I'm here again, right? How did I end up in the same relationship again, but with a different person, or the same situation again, So it's such, that's where really the freedom lies. And I think if we think of that, like in our individual perspective and in the world as well, we're like, okay, we are here again, but so where is the possibility to creating something new?
Yeah.
So that's all I would add.
Yeah. And, I think I could go into a lot of, sort of, conceptual aspects and, about shadow and shadow work, that comes from, the studies I've done in depth psychology. And so I don't want to go into that too deeply here, but I do just want to say that just shadow is, generally understood. It arrives, out of a depth psychological perspective, that there are these aspects of ourselves that we repress, we deny, we disavow, we don't center in a sense of awareness and care, that end up running our systems in a variety of ways, through the choices that we make in terms of what we consume, through the choices that we make, or the reactions that we have. Like we'll talk more about this as a theme around choice, right? To some extent, shadows can assert in ways that very much limit what we experience as choice, right? And they have us reacting in patterns around certain things. And shadow is individual. We have our individual shadows, and then shadows also loom very strongly collectively. And this is another, just sort of primer I want to lay here, that, a big intention for our space is to be in this interface, right, between what is the relationship, what is the commingling, what is the enmeshment within our individual, what we experience as personal shadow, and what is alive in the world in terms of collective shadow, and how can our personal work bridge into this space of collective attention to what it is that perpetuates harm, and that keeps us in contradictory behavior to what we actually want to center and arrive at and achieve within community and collective experience. So I just wanted to add that a little bit. So.
Yes, beautiful. So we have so much more to share, and we will continue in our next episode to explore some more of the kind of the tools, the practices, the practices, the teachings really that we draw on, that both of us individually and mutually have found helpful. And like I've said before, give me all the tools, because I need them for sure. And meanwhile, we also wanted to put out an invitation for some group work. So if all of this calls to you and you want to engage even more personally, and for both of us, the working group is always so powerful, because there we have the shared experience and the individual experience and the weaving between the two. And so much happens in a space where we create the possibility to really be true, raw, vulnerable, expressive, and be witnessed in that. And something truly extraordinary happens when groups come together. Usually themes weave that we don't even understand how the weaving is happening between the different participants, and the shared experience, and how when one person might be diving into their work, it really moves all of us and we collectively hold it. So this is happening in January. Jessica, do you have the exact dates and times?
January 13th and 14th. And you can get some more information on this through links, both on our Spotify and on our Instagram, leaning_in_. There'll be a link to register for this group work on January 13th and 14th, which will be taking place between the hours of 10 a.m. Eastern time and 1 p.m. Eastern time. So 3 hours over the course of those 2 days each. So 6 hours total to dive in. We'll keep the group at a limited number. So there's, a capacity for each person there to really engage in a personal way. And then also the group itself to be able to benefit from what happens interpersonally, and, collectively in terms of really attending to wounding and meeting our conditioning in ways that helps to support new possibilities to open up and new qualities of relationship with ourselves, one another, and the world. So we hope you'll join us. All right. Thank you. We appreciate your presence in this space. If you sense that friends, family, or peers would benefit from leaning in, please share.
If an episode speaks to you in a particularly meaningful way, or raises questions that you would like to share with us, we would love to hear from you. You can connect with us here on Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram at leaning_in_.
Leaning In is produced by Tanya Mikwitz and Jessica Lesty. The beautiful music you hear here is provided by Masood Ali Khan. Our sound engineer is Marley Mikwitz Montgomery.